Welcome back to the VandySports podcast. Obviously, coming at you with a much better tone tonight after Vanderbilt's 89-87 win than I had on Friday when Vanderbilt dropped that 10-point loss to Southern Miss. But the story of the night tonight was Vanderbilt's offense on Friday. Shot, I believe, 32% from the field, 12% from three. Frankly, it wasn't good enough. Tonight, Vanderbilt came out and looked like a completely different team offensively. They shot way too many threes on Friday. They didn't put it in the post a lot. They couldn't get downhill tonight early on, essentially from the tip. That all went away. Vanderbilt's 10 of their first 11 points were points in the paint. One of them was a touch to Liam Robbins in the post, and that seemed to be a theme the entire night. Vanderbilt was able to get downhill. They were able to get the looks they wanted essentially all night, and it was Vanderbilt's veterans who led the charge. Jordan Wright had 18 points on 9 for 18 shooting. Finally saw Jordan Wright in more of a high-volume role, had 13 shots on Friday night. Thought maybe this would be in the cards to where Jordan Wright is kind of a Scottie Pippen type volume guy. Obviously, Pippen probably shot a little bit more than that on average, but Wright seemed to be a guy who maybe not the highest efficiency guy, but is slowly turning into that go get you a bucket guy. And I wasn't sure that he would really be that after the Memphis game and kind of what we saw from him. Ezra Manjon had a nice performance tonight as well, 11 and 9. And I talked a lot, I believe, on Friday about kind of how they needed more from him as a distributor. Only had 1 assist then. Tonight had 9 assists and kind of showed what he could be and how dynamic he could be to this offense. Was a guy who really didn't show you anything through the first 2 games offensively. Had 5 assists combined. I'm not sure he even had double-digit points combined. Tonight had 11, 9 assists. Really showed how he can penetrate the defense and showed some mid-range shot ability. Hit that shot really to seal the game for Vanderbilt. Robbins had to get that block, and I'm not sure Vanderbilt wins if he doesn't block that shot, but Ezra gets that shot to put him ahead and really just continue that momentum. If he doesn't hit that shot, Vanderbilt loses the game, and that was a huge one for Vanderbilt. And I'm not sure he was the guy I would have turned to in that situation, but he was the guy who was effective, and that's kind of the beauty of this team. Jordan Wright's to go get you a bucket guy, but you have 4 veterans and probably a 5th in Tyron Lawrence eventually who can be guys who are able to go get you a bucket when you need it, although probably not at the level of a Scottie Pippen. It's going to be by committee, and there's a lot of different threats on the court for Vanderbilt, although they may not all show up. Tyron Lawrence didn't have a great outing tonight, had 5 points after 4 early points, didn't really do much the rest of the game. I think that free throw was either late in regulation or late in overtime, but Vanderbilt's kind of struggles offensively are kind of summed up by Lawrence, and kind of their range was shown tonight. You had Jordan Wright, Ezra, Studi, Liam Robbins all have great nights. Tyron Lawrence didn't have a great night, and that's kind of the problem with playing by committee like they do, is all those guys aren't going to be on every night. And I don't know if they have a guy truly good enough to be a Scottie Pippen type where you can turn to him every night for him to be the guy, but it's just a different style, and the beauty of it is that when you have 4 guys on tonight like Vanderbilt had, you can really take advantage of that. As last year, I don't know if they could really do that. 4 guys tonight who you felt comfortable giving the ball to in pressure situations. Liam Robbins obviously had 20 points, 9 for 11 from the field, blocked a few shots, and just this was maybe Liam Robbins' best game in a Vanderbilt uniform. I think he kind of pushed back on that idea in the press conference a little bit, but 20 points, 9 for 11 from the field, pretty freaking good, and didn't stretch the floor like maybe we could see in the future. Didn't shoot a 3, but Robbins was really good tonight, and I think it's always been there with Liam Robbins. They just have to be intentional about getting the touches in the post, and they haven't done that thus far. Tonight seemed to do that a little bit more, and it paid off for him. That was a great kind of adjustment by Stackhouse between games, just deciding to dump it down to the post early and often throughout tonight's game. And I don't think Vanderbilt wins the game tonight, even with all those great performances by the veterans outside of Robbins, if they don't dump it down to the post. They're not good enough on the perimeter to win a game like this to me. You got to have some of it come through the post, and Liam Robbins had a phenomenal game tonight, maybe one of his best in a Vanderbilt uniform. Speaking of one of their best in a Vanderbilt uniform, Miles Studi had 7 threes tonight, 7 to 12 from the field, 7 to 10 from 3 with 21 points. Just seemed like he couldn't miss, and he showed why many consider him the best shooter in the SEC. If you think he's the best shooter in the SEC, tonight was a helpful night for your argument and your narrative. So Miles Studi was really good for Vanderbilt tonight. Had a rough game on Friday, 4 points. I think he had 4 or 5 turnovers as well. Rebounded well in that game, but didn't do enough in his role to be effective for them, and got the start again tonight. Has been their only starter throughout all 3 games, and was just really solid. Didn't seem like he could miss, and I think there was a few shots that he probably got fouled on that he hit too. So Studi was a big addition for them tonight, and they hadn't really gotten too much from him. I think he hit a few shots in the Memphis game, but tonight was really his coming out party of the season, and the first game that he really made a big impact in. Had 21 points, 6 rebounds, and an assist on 70% shooting from 3. In Miles Studi's role, you can't ask for much more than that, especially in the absence of Colin Smith, who Stack thinks will probably miss a at least significant amount of time with I believe it was a wrist injury. So I think that's certainly worth touching on as well. Colin Smith, obviously an important piece to this Vanderbilt team, probably looked like one of their best players on Friday night, probably their second best player behind Jordan Wright, who even Wright wasn't incredibly efficient, even when he did look like he flipped a switch. So Smith's a big loss for this team. I think just his length and his ability to crash the glass is huge for them. In terms of the small ball lineups, I think he fills some of the gaps of maybe a traditional small ball lineup with a guy like Studi at the 4, just because of how long he is and how he can affect the game on the glass. But they're going to have to turn to Miles Studi now. It has to be Malik Dia. Maybe they go with a 2 big lineup. We didn't see that tonight, but that idea's been thrown around a little bit. I think Robbins is probably better as a low post guy, and Malora Brown is as well. And I think maybe you give up a little bit there defensively, but I think Smith's effect is probably going to be more noticeable the longer he's out, just because I think he gives them so many more options when they play that small ball lineup, and he fills some of the gaps of a traditional small ball lineup. He's kind of the middleman between Studi and Robbins at the 5. So big loss for Vanderbilt, especially since it seemed like Smith was really coming to his own. Now it's Malik Diaz's time. Now it's Miles Studi's time to get big minutes. And I think those guys are more or less ready to step into that role, especially Studi. And we're going to see a lot of Malik Dia, depending on how long he's out. Speaking of the freshman, Lee Dort scored his first basket tonight, and you saw how talented Lee Dort was tonight in that play where kind of fenced off the defender, went up strong, got the N1, and you saw he's a little bit of a project as well, just with the way he missed the free throw on an air ball. Malik Dia was more of the same, 1 for 5 from the field, but had that catch and shoot 3, and man, was that thing pretty. But the freshman class chipped in tonight, wasn't incredibly effective. They were missing their most effective freshman in Smith. Lewis scored his first career basket, though. Miles Keefe got on the floor for the first time, and Noah Shelby did not play again. But I think the freshman class outside of Smith has some growing to do, and Stack is letting them do that early. So a lot of storylines tonight in Vanderbilt's big win. This is probably going to be a quad 2 win for Vanderbilt. So obviously important for their resume, especially after Friday night. And I think it's important for a team like Vanderbilt, who hasn't had a whole lot of close games so far, to get in a game situation like this and have to play in an important environment with your back against the wall in the last few minutes. You got to get a stop here. You got to score here. You got to hit these free throws, and they didn't shoot the free throws very well tonight, 4 for 11. But we're incredibly efficient otherwise. Shot 54% from the field, 50% from 3. The free throw thing kind of comes back to they still have room to grow, though. Shot 4 for 11 from 3 or from the line. And that's a team that is pretty old. Like, this is a team that probably needs to hit shots at a higher level. Also, there's overtime stats, and Vanderbilt shot 2 for 4 from the line. So that would be, the total is 4 for 11. Sorry, it's late. But yeah, Vanderbilt has to shoot it better from the line. They turned it over too many times late. They couldn't get enough stops. And I think that would have been more of a thing had they lost that we would look back on. I think Vanderbilt did make some mistakes late that let Temple get back in the game, allowed their guards to make plays, and those guys are great shot makers that Vanderbilt really doesn't want to put in a position where they can kind of get them back in the game, and Vanderbilt did that tonight. I wouldn't say they're lucky to come out with a win just because Vanderbilt played their best game of the year, but you can't make mistakes like that consistently, especially in the SEC, and expect to win close games. So Vanderbilt has to tighten some things up. They have to tighten the turnovers up, especially late in the game. I don't think they turned it over a whole lot tonight. Had 23 assists to 9 turnovers. That's an incredibly encouraging sign, especially since Ezra Manjon was such a big contributor in that aspect. Jordan Wright also had 7 assists. Um, sorry, big night though for Vanderbilt's veterans, and I think that was probably the big story. The big story as well as their offense, obviously, and that's going to be the story all year. Can Vanderbilt shoot it well enough? Can they pass it well enough to kind of offset a little bit of that talent gap that they have as opposed to other SEC teams? They're going to have to shoot it better, and they're going to have to shoot it a little less from beyond the arc and get better looks than they've had. Only shot 18 threes tonight. Um, I think this was about as good of an offensive night as you could have written up for Vanderbilt. And although the defense wasn't great, especially early on, you saw them flip a switch, saw kind of where this defense could be, got some stops around the mid-second half that allowed for an 8-0 run, kind of held on from there, but couldn't get stops late in the game and late in overtime that kind of put Temple back within striking distance. So there's certainly things for this team to improve on. And they gave about everything they had tonight and only won by 2 against a good team. So that kind of shows you the talent gap a little bit between the SEC, but there's no way to spin this to say this isn't encouraging. Especially considering where Vanderbilt was about 72 hours ago. Tonight is unbelievably encouraging for this team and something that they can move forward with heading into Morehead State on Friday. If they can get that game, they're 2-2, have some momentum, and it's a team that I wouldn't say is necessarily awesome, but it's a team that can be dangerous if they can hit shots like this tonight, if their veterans play like they did tonight, and their offense moves the way they did tonight. I think just the facilitating from Ezra and Jordan was really important for this team, and was just so refreshing as compared to what we saw last week. So Vanderbilt wins by a score of 89-87 against Temple in one of the best college basketball games I've seen this year. Big win for the Commodores, who look to improve their record on Friday night against Morehead State. Chris will be at that game. I will be covering Lipscomb versus Notre Dame. I'll be on the radio. I'll probably tweet that out if any of you want to listen to that while listening to Vanderbilt. And of course, have to listen to Chris after. So thank you guys for watching. Hectic night for Vanderbilt hoops and a hectic night for myself, but was fun. And I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of fun watching this game with the way Vanderbilt played. So big night for Vandy hoops. How do they build on it from here is probably the most important question, but we'll see that on Friday night, and we will see it next week for real against St. Mary's and against either Washington or Fresno State. Those will be 2 of their biggest games of the year early on. So really important stretch coming for Vandy hoops, and it was important that they went into it with some confidence after a win tonight. So big night for Vandy hoops, like I said, after a 89-87 win in Philadelphia. I'm Joey Dwyer. Thank you guys for watching. God bless. Peace.